The drop pod screamed through Kepler 442's atmosphere, its heat shields glowing white-hot as Harper gripped the harness straps until her knuckles turned pale. Across from her, James checked his survival kit for the third time, his jaw set in that determined way she'd come to recognize during their academy training. 30 seconds to surface impact, the automated voice announced with infuriating calm. This was supposed to be a routine survival exercise. 2 weeks on Kepler, 442b's smallest moon, a hostile rock orbiting a gas giant, where cadets proved they could endure extreme conditions. Every species in the Galactic Coalition had their version of the trial. The difference was that most species considered surviving to be achievement enough. Humans, Harper had learned, rarely did anything the expected way. The pod slammed into the surface, and Harper's teeth rattled despite the shock absorption. Steam hissed from the cooling vents as the door explosive bolts fired, revealing a landscape that looked like someone had taken Mars and made it actively malicious. Crimson sand stretched to jagged mountains, and the sky burned an ominous orange from the reflected light of the gas giant looming overhead. Temperature reads -40 Celsius, James said, scanning their surroundings with his wrist-mounted display. Radiation levels are elevated but manageable with our suits. Oxygen content is. A shriek split the air, high-pitched and furious. Both cadets spun toward the sound. 3 creatures emerged from behind a boulder formation, each roughly the size of a large dog, but decidedly more hostile-looking. They had 6 legs, crystalline scales that reflected the orange sky, and mouths filled with what appeared to be obsidian teeth. Their eyes glowed an eerie blue, fixed on the humans with unmistakable predatory intent. Scanning database, Harper whispered, slowly reaching for her plasma pistol. Species unknown. Great. Just great. The creatures circled them, moving with disturbing coordination. James and Harper stood back to back, weapons drawn. The Academy had trained them for hostile wildlife encounters across dozens of worlds. But something about these creatures made Harper's instincts scream danger. The largest one lunged. James fired, but the plasma bolt deflected off the creature's crystalline scales. It crashed into him, and they went down in a tangle of limbs and thrashing. Harper aimed carefully, then hesitated. She couldn't shoot without risking James. Instead, she did something the instructors would have called monumentally stupid. She dropped her weapon and threw herself onto the creature's back, wrapping her arms around its neck in a chokehold she'd learned in hand-to-hand combat training. The creature bucked and twisted, but Harper held on with desperate strength, her suit's servos whining with the effort. "Harper, what are you?" James scrambled backward as the other 2 creatures prepared to pounce. "Food," Harper shouted. "Throw them your rations." It was a gamble based on pure instinct. James didn't question it. He yanked emergency ration bars from his pack and hurled them at the advancing creatures. They stopped mid-charge, sniffing the air, then descended on the food with ravenous intensity. The creature beneath Harper had stopped struggling, its breathing heavy but no longer aggressive. Carefully, very carefully, Harper loosened her grip. The creature twisted its head to look at her with those glowing blue eyes, and something passed between them. Not quite understanding, but a kind of recognition. Harper released it completely and slowly reached for another ration bar. The creature watched as she broke it in half and offered a piece. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the creature delicately took the food from her hand with surprising gentleness. "You've got to be kidding me," James breathed. Over the next 2 weeks, what should have been a brutal survival exercise became something stranger and more wonderful. The creatures, which Harper named Crystal, Spike, and Glimmer for their distinctive scale patterns, became constant companions. They proved invaluable for survival, leading the cadets to underground thermal vents for warmth and water sources hidden beneath the sand. In return, Harper and James shared their rations and discovered the creatures had a peculiar fondness for the synthetic protein bars that even human cadets complained about. Crystal, the largest, developed a protective streak toward Harper, positioning herself between the cadet and any potential danger. Spike bonded with James, often sleeping curled against his thermal suit at night. Glimmer, the smallest and most curious, had a habit of stealing small equipment items, creating a nest of scanners, wire, and anything shiny. On the 13th day, a massive sandstorm rolled across the plains. The cadets' emergency shelter was designed to withstand extreme weather, But when a gust tore part of the anchoring loose, it was the three creatures who threw their weight against the shelter walls, their crystalline scales interlocking to create a reinforcing barrier that held until the storm passed. When the extraction shuttle arrived on day 14, the Vraxian pilot took one look at Harper and James standing with their three companion creatures and made a sound that the translator rendered as confused disbelief. "Cadets, what are those?" the pilot asked, his four eye stalks swiveling between the humans and creatures. "Pets," Harper said simply, scratching behind Crystal's auditory ridge, which made the creature rumble with contentment. "Pets." The pilot's translator seemed to struggle with the concept. "Those are apex predators of this moon. They've killed 3 survey teams. They just needed proper introduction," James said, while Spike nuzzled against his leg. The report Harper and James filed caused a sensation at the Academy. The creatures of Kepler 442b's moon, classified as impossible to domesticate by Galactic Coalition xenobiologists, were now officially registered as humanity's newest companion species. Within a year, qualified handlers were returning to the moon, establishing the first interspecies exchange program. The Galactic Coalition had dropped human cadets on a hostile moon, expecting them to merely survive. Instead, Harper and James had done what humans had been doing since the dawn of their species on ancient Earth. They'd looked at something wild and dangerous and asked not, "How do we kill it?" but "How do we make it family?" In their official report, the Academy's commandant, a stern Kelvorian who rarely showed emotion, wrote a single line that would become legendary. "Humans don't conquer worlds. They adopt them." Crystal, Spike, and Glimmer lived long, happy lives at the Academy's Xenobiology Center, where they became ambassadors for their species and shameless beggars for protein bars. And every new human cadet learned their story, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology, that it was their inexplicable ability to make friends with anything that moved.